What's up everyone, Taiki here, and today I wanted to an update on my real-world asset thesis and where I stand. So if you like the content, please like and subscribe and check out the premium Discord, link will be in the description below. Prices go up February 1st, so make sure to sign up now to lock in the lower rate. So let's get started. So if you've been following me, you know that I've been tweeting and talking about MKR and CANTO for the past 6 months, or a little bit over 6 months. And I really haven't talked about it recently just because there's like not much new has happened. But I guess if you like the MKR chart, I mean, this is, imagine that, you saw this chart and it was called ETH, right? Everyone would be just bull posting this out of their minds, but because it's MKR, right? It's under-owned. I don't think there's that much attention on it. But I mean, if something's under-owned, then I think that bodes well for me. But before I talk about the price, I do want to just talk about the thesis in the background, like around RWAs, just in case you're new to the channel. If you're aware of my thesis, make sure to skip the section. I'll add timestamps below. But I just want to tell my story of how I got here and why I'm bullish these assets and this particular sector. So I've been in DeFi since 2020, essentially. And a lot of people think that I'm like a DeFi maxi, a DeFi bull, a yield farming, airdrop farming bull, like whatever you want to call it. And I'm a natural optimist. So throughout the bear market, I was consistently looking for, I suppose, applications that could potentially save DeFi. Because if you think about the recent bear market and you look at, let's say, the stablecoin supply, as soon as the Fed started raising rates, the amount of stablecoins just kept leaving the chain. And I realized that DeFi can't really compete with the risk-free rate when people can just buy CDs and T-bills and clip 5%. I even argue that even at like 4%, I still think that most DeFi applications can't really compete. They can compete in the short term by just throwing out points or token incentives and offering users yield in the short term. But obviously, in order for those people to realize that yield, they have to dump the token, and then at some point, it becomes unsustainable. And I've been, thinking a lot about how can, the stablecoin, the stablecoin supply and the stablecoin market, how can it bottom? Like what needs to happen for it to bottom? And one of the first conclusions I reached, and this is like back in July and August when I declared the end of the DeFi bear market and the beginning of the DeFi bull market, is that, I think the first step that I think we need to go through in order to see a sustainable DeFi bull market is we have to fix we have to fix the issue around stablecoin yield. Like why would people hold stables on chain if they can just clip yield off chain? And I thought that the first order of operations was let's import TradFi yield on chain, and that would make stablecoin liquidity a lot stickier, right? And I talked about, I guess, like the Fed's rate cycle, and I guess what needs to happen. And I talked about MKR as the first project that is working towards this. And if you look at this MKR like dashboard, so this is makerburn.com. I guess you can go to the top right here, right? Actually, my face is hidden. Okay, hold up. Oh shoot. Okay, hold up. This is I'm testing in prod. Okay, there you go. Okay, there. Okay, so okay, you click on this thing, right? And then you can go to the collateral list, and then you can look at this block tower Andromeda vault. They hold $1 billion worth of DAI. They own $1 billion worth of T-bills, because essentially what they're doing is they're borrowing $900 million worth of DAI essentially, and then they're just buying T-bills on chain. And if you look at the system surplus, every couple weeks, millions of dollars come from off-chain to on-chain through block tower Andromeda. This is one of the real-world asset vaults. Monetized vault, another one, and then there's also like 9 figures worth of stablecoins in Coinbase custody earning 30%, and then there's like a couple $100,000 that flow into this. And as long as the system surplus is over 50 million DAI, then the protocol is going to continue buying back its token. So right now, I think every 7 or 8 hours it buys back 50k worth of DAI, 50k worth of MKR, right? 50k worth of MKR. Right, you can see this here, and it's paired with 50k worth of DAI. So every 8 hours, it's buying back the protocol is buying back 50k worth of MKR, pairing it with 50k worth of DAI. So that 100k goes into protocol owned liquidity. So MKR is actually the most liquid altcoin on chain, not named like Ethereum or stablecoins, right? Or like I guess like wrapped Bitcoin. And you can kind of see that if you look at the stability fee income all time, I mean, it's making all-time highs in terms of revenues. I mean, that looks pretty good. And then you look at the annual profit estimate, and it's not all-time highs essentially from like, I guess, the last bull market, but it definitely seems like an uptrend. And, you know, it's one of the first DeFi tokens that actually has token value accrual because the system is buying back its own token. And the DSR, so you know, how can you earn the risk-free rate on chain? You can take your DAI, stake it in the DSR, and it's earning 5%. And you can kind of see that there's a lot of money into this thing. And I expected, right, back when I wrote this thread, or so, you know, I run HFA Research, a DeFi research company, and you know, back in July, I just like bought a bunch of Maker, right? I think the price was like roughly $1,000, right? Yeah, basically I bought a bunch of Maker at $1,000 because, well, like real world assets seem like a big deal. There's actual value accrual. All the tokens are vested. There's no VC bags. I mean, VCs hold some bags, but there's like no VC vesting, right? So I'm like, okay, like I don't really see that much downside. So let me just ape a bunch of Maker. And yes, it's underperformed things like Solana, but it's outperformed ETH significantly. So you can look at, sorry, the Maker ETH chart. I bought this at 0.5-ish, and I've been calling for parity for quite some time now. Every time it gets like 0.93, I bull post, and then it just gets immediately sold into. So, you know, Taiki top signal is definitely a thing here, but I do think that it will eventually hit parity, which is 1 Maker equals 1 ETH in terms of like USD value. That's cool. And then also, I guess if you talk about Maker the asset, it's pretty interesting. I think it's a pretty interesting portfolio diversifier. So this is the daily chart, right? And let's say we want to overlay, hold up, not sure why it's not. Let me refresh here real quick. And what we can do is we can overlay the price of Bitcoin USD. So let's go here, the daily, and let's just go here and then overlay. There you go. Bitcoin USD here. And you kind of see this interesting pattern where the orange, right, the orange line, this is the price of Bitcoin. And whenever Bitcoin just goes sideways, Maker is going up. Whenever Bitcoin is going up, Maker is just chopping around. And as soon as Bitcoin, right, started to correct, Maker just started to outperform. So Maker is interesting. And I think it gives, well, in terms of portfolio diversification, I think it gives a good diversifier because it's pretty anti-cyclical to the crypto markets. It is a pretty boring narrative, right? It's not really trying to introduce amazing new tech that's gonna, cure cancer or something. It's more around, well, I mean, it's a really good business that makes a bunch of money. I mean, like look at this, right? $119 million worth of profits. And all this is going to go into buying back the token as long as the system surplus is over $50 million. So that's been the thesis. And, the reason, I guess, we saw this, spike in revenues is because in the most recent Maker governance proposal, they decided to raise the borrow rates for DAI. So if you're using, Ether or wrapped staked ETH or Bitcoin as collateral and you're borrowing DAI, because sure, Maker is a stablecoin issuer and some of the backing is, going into buying T-bills. But, DAI originated as this decentralized stablecoin backed by, Ether, Bitcoin, etc. Some backed by centralized stablecoins and whatnot. And they're like, okay, like we have billions of dollars, listed as collateral, they're borrowing DAI. Why not just increase the rates, right? They're like the Fed, right? It's like, okay, like we're increasing rates, and this can go down because people might decide to unwind their debt positions. But I do think that it's going to consistently be over $100 million. And in terms of catalysts, if you've been watching this channel, you're 100% aware of everything, right? But I think people have a psychological barrier, or they have like a mental block when it comes to like buying Maker, just because they think it's like an uninvestable asset. So I think that's part of my edge, right? Like back when I discovered this in July. And also, there's this catalyst called EndGame happening soon. Sometime this year, I have no idea when, allegedly sometime in Q1 or Q2, where they're going to rebrand Maker and DAI. They hired a marketing firm that's been working on this for over a year. And one of the, I guess, feedback is that, what's the if you're in DeFi, you know what Maker and DAI is, but if you're new to crypto, you don't really know that, Maker issues DAI. So I think they're gonna try to make things sound a lot more, I guess like I don't know, reasonable, I suppose. And it's similar to how I suppose Compound, right? Their stablecoin is called CUSDC, or like their debt token or receipt token is called CUSDC. There's also going to be a redenomination of Maker, allegedly 1 to 24,000. So right now Maker is kind of expensive, or I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? But it's $2,000. It's so expensive. But what if we make it like less than $1, right? Ooh, it's or less than 10 cents. It's like, wow, like it's so cheap, right? You kind of get like the meme coin people crazy. And then there's also sub-DAO farming, where, for example, let's go here. Spark Protocol is a fork of Aave, and hopefully I can access the UI here. But let's launch the app. They have over I'm restricted here, but they have they have over $1 billion or a couple $1 billion, that's being used to borrow borrow DAI against all sorts of collateral, and like how much, like if Spark had a token, like how much would the token be worth? Maybe like $1 billion FDV, and the concept of sub DAOs is that Maker is I guess like it's like the umbrella brand, right? And then there are little like small sub DAOs underneath Maker that focus on specific niches. One of the problems with governance is that as like an MKR token holder, you're expected to know everything, right? Regulation, T-bills, risk parameters, decentralized stablecoin, meta. It doesn't make any sense, right? So what they're going for is let's like split it up into different teams. And let's have all these teams have their own token. And the only way to farm these tokens is via a fair farming mechanism where you have to stake Maker or DAI to earn these tokens. So in the future, when this goes live, you can stake Maker or whatever new token ends up being called, and then maybe you can earn like 10 to 20% in Spark Protocol tokens or another protocol tokens, or you can stake DAI to earn all these new tokens. So it's going to be like a new yield farming speculative frenzy, and right now there's $1.4 billion of DAI in the DSR, and I'm sure some people are going to pull DAI away from the DSR to like farm these new sub-DAO tokens. But because this is like on the $1.4 billion, they're paying 5%, because like staking DAI, right? You give them like a T-bill rate. The cost of the protocol is $72 million. But if people decide to farm these new sub-DAOs, the cost goes down significantly. So I think whenever sub-DAO farming or EndGame gets going, I think the estimate of annual profits probably going to go to like $150 million, right? And the PE ratio will look really cheap. Of course, do people really care about PE ratios? Like, yeah, sure, you can say that. But look at this chart, right? You can make fun of me all you want. But if you think about the risk-adjusted returns of just buying a lot of Maker and just like holding on to it, pretty good, right? Pretty good. Of course, I underperform things like Solana and whatnot, but it is what it is. And like in my portfolio, I have real-world asset tokens. I'll talk about CANTO later, and I also have things like Celestia. And Celestia, I've talked about this in depth, but I think Celestia is like a pure bull market token, right? It'll do really good in a bull. It'll do really bad in a bear. So if that's kind of, and they also don't need and whatnot, but in other tokens, but I can just hold bull market tokens, and then I can just hold Maker, and then I feel like my portfolio would do decently well, because if markets go up, TIA goes up probably, right? And all the airdrops will go up a lot. And if the market just goes sideways, like I shown before, Maker just tends to do really well when Bitcoin and the rest of the markets are going sideways. So if this was the interim top in BTC, I would think that Maker would outperform. So that's the comprehensive Maker thesis. I do meme myself a lot, and I talked about I'm a midcurve, right? Because MKR stands for midcurve, right? Midcurve with a K, right? Midcurve token. But I think I've outperformed beat, so like that's great. And if you want to learn more about EndGame, I'll also share this in the description below. So if you join HFA Premium, I do weekly AMA live streams, and back in November, someone asked me about EndGame, and I kind of spent like 20 minutes talking about it. And I guess like how the macro ties into it. So if you're more interested in that, then I'll provide this in the description below, and make sure and remember that prices go up February 1st. So if you sign up now, you'll get the lower rate. So let's move on to CANTO. Right. So CANTO, let's go here. back in September, right? So I made the MKR thesis in July and then the CANTO thesis in September. And at the time it was like 13, 14 cents. And I was basically targeting all-time highs. And I mean, because I already explained like the MKR thesis, you probably understand, I mean, it's basically like the same thesis, right? They're also an alt L1 that's going to pivot to an L2. And they're going to issue, or they already have their own stablecoin and it's going to be backed by RWAs. So naturally I was like, okay, like that sounds pretty good. And, if the Bitcoin ETF is going to be approved and the Circle IPO is going to happen, then surely, assets like MKR, CANTO, FXS, should outperform. And if you look at, the current price, right, of like MKR, it's like 2,000, so like down 10%, CANTO is like 24 cents or something. So definitely not going according to plan. I will be 100% honest about that. And I also think that, if you think about institutional adoption of crypto, like, are they going to buy? Are they gonna degen farm on chain? Probably not, right? They're probably gonna just issue stablecoins on chain. So it was more MKR and CANTO was kind of this macro bet that I was making, that more and more stablecoins, people are gonna choose to hold, let's say, stake DAI over USDC because stake DAI pays a yield, and we're gonna see more of a migration to yield-bearing dollars because people demand better products. Because right now, if you hold USDC or Tether in your wallet and you're not doing anything with it, like all that backing goes to Circle, they're buying T-bills and they're keeping all the profits. Whereas MKR and CANTO, they're sharing the profits. That was kind of the idea. And I think the best way to track it is going through the original thesis and figure out whether or not the thesis has been invalidated or not. I think that's like the most rational way to do this. So, I talked about, okay, CANTO is kind of like a derivative of the MKR thesis. Like I talked about this, right? I think MKR is going to do really well, but no one wants to hold MKR because they have biases. So therefore, they might look for, I guess, like smaller, higher beta coins, and maybe a MKR and CANTO portfolio, or that's kind of like a good barbell way to think about it. CANTO is a very hated asset. I think in Q1 of 2023. It was kind of like a pump and dump amongst all the influencers. The team really had no control over it, right? It's just like, a few influencers decided to pump and dump, and then, it kind of hurt a lot of people, or, it kind of skewed or perverted like people's views on CANTO. So, like whenever something's contrarian, it's just like, if you're contrarian, right, like it can pay off a lot. They're going to migrate to a ZKL2. I don't really think it's that big of a deal, to be honest. And they're going to issue, or they're basically partnering with other RWA issuers like Cumberland, Hashnote, Fortunify, and they're essentially trying to be real-world asset infra. They're also going to aim to, Hashnote, Fortunify, etc. MKR, right? I mean, I talked about this, but MKR is like the only way to gain exposure to like Tether or Circle equity, or it's kind of like a proxy, and you can kind of see this here, where right now on CANTO, there's $17 million worth of real world assets issued by Fortunify, Hashnote, and you can see there's like the market sizes here, and people can borrow Note, which is a stablecoin against it, and do the carry trade. So let's say the TBL rate is 5%. People can borrow Note at 4.95 and then lever it up if they want to. At 4.95, it doesn't really make sense, but that's kind of the idea. And, T-bills alone is kind of boring, right? It doesn't make that much sense. So I guess part 2 of the thesis is that, it's not just going to be T-bills. There's going to be other types of real world assets. So like, for example, like I think this is like the Vanguard. Yeah. So this is the Vanguard corporate credit index, which pays like 6.5%. And people can use that as collateral to also borrow Note, roughly 5%. So, if it was kind of bet that, okay, like this is RWA infrastructure, it's listing T-bills on chain, it's listing corporate credit on chain, people can borrow against it. And, if crypto degens make a bunch of money and they want to diversify into yield-bearing dollars, sure, they can, like farm stables for 10, 20% on like some random farm on some random chain. But, if you take into account the risks, right? Of course, if something is paying 20% and the risk rate is 5%, there's like some incremental amounts of risk. So if crypto degens want to diversify wealth, some of the wealth is going to go into real world assets. That was kind of the idea. And if you go back to this, right, it was 14 cents. It's pretty cheap. And then, yeah, so this is back in September 29th, right? Assuming CANTO's real world asset and the yield bearing dollar launch isn't a flop, I think that TVL is going to hit all time highs. And because it's in layer one, if I said that back in September, if the TVL hits all time highs, then price should also go to all time highs, right? So it's basically a bet on TVL. I know TVL is not like the perfect metric, but I think for like real world assets, I think it is a good metric. And I said that if it doesn't happen, then I'm wrong on these, and you can all laugh at me. And I said this, right? I said this, and it seems like it's not happening, right? I mean, I guess you can kind of zoom in here, right? Kind of zoom in here. Back when I made a thesis, it was like roughly $40 million of TVL, and now it's sitting at 60. Yeah, like basically 60. So, I mean, a 50% increase in 3 months, 4 months. I mean, this is like one of the hardest parts about investing, right? Because I don't really try to trade short-term stuff. It's more about, okay, I have a macro thesis. Crypto moves so fast. So when I say macro thesis, it's like, okay, like 6 months plus, right? I mean, that's still a long time in crypto. So I was like, okay, like how do I know that, like, is the thesis invalidated or is it not invalidated? It's really hard to tell. But I did say in my past videos that, if like I would expect like by January TVL to be like near 100 million, right? Like 9 figures TVL, and it's not there. So if I were to be completely honest with myself, objectively, I think I've been wrong on a thesis. And you do have permission to laugh at me. I haven't sold a single CANTO, just FYI. I have not dumped all my followers, if that's what people are accusing me of. But I am considering, okay, like, am I right? Am I wrong? I'm not sure. If you look at the price action of CANTO, it's not bad, right? I mean, I initially bought in pretty low because no one else was looking at it. I'm like, wow, like this is such good risk reward. And then I'm like, okay, it went up. I was euphoric. I was bull posting everywhere, and then it's at 24 cents, and I'm like, I can't believe it, right? If I were to be completely honest, I mean, if you look at the daily chart, I mean, it doesn't look good, right? We have uptrend on the way up, and now we have lower highs, lower lows, and maybe if we see a lower high, then that's very bad. So where am I at? Well, there you go. I'm not sure. Like I'm not gonna go on camera and be like just buy the dip, like, because I had a thesis. Like I'm not sure why I can't delete it. I had a thesis. I posted about the thesis. If you look at my channel, I have like a CANTO playlist of like 12 videos or something. It's kind of ridiculous, right? And this is one of the dangers of, I guess, sharing my ideas in public, right? It's like in real time. It's like, oh, I could be wrong. So, I'm still bullish real world assets, but maybe I'm betting on the wrong horse. Is kind of my thought. I still think Maker. Look at this Maker chart. It's so good. Imagine this was called ETH, right? Like everyone would be just bull posting out of their minds. But the fact that it's called MKR is just like, people just don't want to buy it. And that personally makes me very excited. Yeah, there you go. Like 40 or 12 minutes ago, more buybacks. So like I think every 8 hours, like the protocol is buying about 50K worth of Maker. So that's a pretty good tailwind. And also, there's this concept of liquidity begets liquidity. And the fact that, there's like this thought, it's like, oh, like I don't want my token to be liquid because then it's harder to pump on the upside, right? That's like what degens think. But also, like if a token's liquid, it's harder for it to dump, right? But if you also think about how big players think, some certain players have liquidity constraints and they can only enter plays above like a certain liquidity threshold. Like it just makes sense. So I do think that their plan of accumulating protocol and liquidity is smart. I I also talked to Rune on like the maker governance forums. You can probably look it up, but they are considering one day just like buying and burning maker. So instead of like pairing it with pairing liquidity, uh, buying maker and pairing it with DAI and like doing protocol and liquidity, they might just like buy and burn maker at some point. So that could be like a positive. Like honestly, like my plan was honestly like just like buy this and when no one's watching, and then like once endgame gets started and like they rebrand and then there's like sub farming, like you're gonna see so many people talk about it, right? And that's probably like the type of people that I want to sell into, right? Like that's probably like that was like the original thesis, and I put a big bag into maker. It's up 2x, and it's very liquid, right? So I don't have to worry about, I guess, like not being able to get out and stuff. So maker, I'm still pretty well convicted, or like pretty highly convicted, because sure, it's like a real world asset play, but also they can just like hike up rates for borrowers and like make much more money. So it's kind of like a bet on old DeFi, real world assets, and I guess a trusted lending platform. And CANTO was more of like this dark horse, which I thought would potentially do well. You know, but like maybe it flopped, right? But also, like I mentioned, it's really hard when you're living the day to day with crypto, because like maybe it's not wrong, right? Like maybe it just happens to be that in March TVL just like goes up a lot. But like also, if I keep pushing the goalposts, then I'm just like a bag holder bias, right? That's literal bag holder bias. So from my perspective, I mean honestly, I don't really know if CANTO is gonna end up working. I'm just gonna be honest, right? I still think Maker's gonna do well, but CANTO, we'll see. I still haven't sold anything, but where I'm at. Maybe I end up like maybe like maybe if you go back to this, 10 cents and then like I capitulate there. But it is what it is. There's like no perfect way to see the future and whatnot. So that's kind of where I'm at with the real world asset thesis. I know that there's a bunch of competitors launching, or I guess not competitors, and like newer protocols like Ondo, like Mountain Protocol, and all that. And I guess the moat that Maker has is like brand and all. Yeah, I mean it's the strongest brand. In CANTO, I guess it's like I mean it's a lower market cap for a reason, right? No, if something was so obvious, then it would be like a multi-billion-dollar market cap right now. So the fact that it's like trading at like roughly $200 million market cap, I think. I don't know what the market cap is. Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard sometimes. They're also gonna do like music NFTs, and like I don't even know what that means, but whatever, right? Like maybe I'll let the team cook, right? Come on, team, cook for me. But all right, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to check out Premium Discord. I'll provide a link in the description for this in case you're interested. But other than that, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching, and have fun farming out there. Bye bye.